If you want to see me reassemble my turbo on the 2015 Jeep Renegade using new parts, check out this video. Hi there guys, and welcome back to part 2 of my turbocharger on this 2015 Jeep Renegade. So if you wanted to watch how I diagnosed the problem, check out part 1. But in part 2, we're actually going to reassemble the turbo using new parts from China and obviously put it back on the car and hopefully hear it running at the end. Now, just to recap over the issues we've had, here is a quick video of how the engine sounded. And this is what we found. So here is the old rotating assembly off the car, and I'll show you the damage right now. So initially I thought it was this nut was actually loose and it had dropped off and actually gone down into the actuator, and I could feel a load of shaft play, but the more I went into it, the more I actually found wrong. So whilst that is loose, it hasn't actually come off, and that hadn't actually scored any of the cold side of the turbo. What had happened is when I pulled this off of the hot side of the turbine actually fell straight out, and so did that washer like that. And now you can actually see how chewed up that is. Now this is what you actually heard on the video, so it was that spinning and scraping on the hot side there. So there's two reasons for this. It was either because the oil was completely blocked through the rotating assembly, you can see it's completely congealed there, and it was even congealed down into the oil feed pipe. So it's taken me over an hour to actually clear this through and to make sure this is absolutely spotless before we reassemble, and it was congealed all the way through this section here. So I know that's spotless and that's going to go back on the car. But this is the part that I'm going to be showing you. So instead of getting a whole assembly, I spoke to a friend who actually works rebuilding these, and he said that this is too far gone, it's not worth reassembling. So we actually decided to order one from China, which he's done a few times. And I've actually made a separate video reviewing this product. Now I was a bit dubious, but once I started to take a look at it and read some of the reviews and also seeing what comes in the box, I was really impressed. So it just comes with a thank you, comes with some instructions there, comes with the oil drain gasket and also that rubber gasket there that goes around like that. And then just on the back there you've got the performance and testing record. So this is where they've actually tested it up to 200,000 RPM, and you can see obviously the graph that is plotted there as well. So really impressive, and that is the one for this actual unit, it's not just a common one. And then what else you get in the box is obviously the new rotating assembly there. So just going to unbag this and we'll compare it back to the old one. So looking at the front, it's absolutely spot on. Obviously it doesn't have the rubber around it yet, we've got to get that out of the pack. But even the turbine looks exactly the same, and even the nut as well. And you'll notice on the nuts, and these look different on every single one, that's how they actually balance the shaft. So you can see that they've done a bit of grinding there. Now this is the most impressive part. When you look at this side, which is actually the hot side, and you look at this turbine, if you look at the old turbine, you see how much it's actually worn down, and you can appreciate why it was making such a noise as well. So I've actually taken a load of measurements of both of these, and the casting is absolutely spot on. I've not found one measurement where it's even slightly off, so it's an exact replica of this part. So just to offer it up to the housing here, so this is the cold side. Obviously look for the groove, and it sits in there. And it sits absolutely perfect. It fits as good as the OEM one. And you can see it just spin like that. Now here's the reason that I bought the Chinese one. So when I called a load of part shops to see about just getting a replacement one of these for the Garrett Turbo, they wouldn't want to sell me this. They basically wanted to sell me the whole assembly, and that whole assembly was $1,300 in Australian dollars. So found this online, and like I say, my friend had actually used these Wheelot ones before, so there's the brand there, and this cost me $120 delivered from China, and it arrived in 10 days. And like I say, I couldn't be happier with the quality. As I just mentioned, the oil feed pipe was blocked solid, so I've just done a little test here in the oil drain pipe here, just to prove that there's not a blockage in there. So I'm just going to get a little funnel there and just some fresh oil, and I'll show you how quickly it actually drains straight through. There you go, it took a couple of seconds, but it comes straight out, and that's just proving that that oil drain there isn't clogged. So you might want to do a similar test on yours. Now, because we know there was a thickening of the oil, I wanted to check all of the filters as well. So I did also take off the cylinder head oil filter, which looks like this. And I've given this a really good clean before it goes back in the car, and it wasn't actually too bad. So I do hope that the bad oil was just around the turbocharger. Now I am going to do an oil change shortly after replacing the turbo, and I'll make a video of me doing that oil change as well. So let's just put this back in the cylinder head. Now it's quite a simple process. It's found just down here. Now normally there is a plastic housing just over there, and it's only on by two 10mm bolts. And this is also a 10mm hex bit. So you're just going to push that in like that. Get your 10mm, and you'll notice I've already put some thread locker on there. Get that in there. And you do have to put a little bit of pressure on there just to get that back in. And we're looking for that to be inset about 1mm. Don't have to over tighten it. And that'll do us. Now you can replace your plastic cover. So just remembering that this cable here actually goes midway through. Just going to start to see that around, clip it in, and then we're actually going to rotate this side here inside, so it goes down towards that bolt there, and then we can just get our 10mm bolts to go back in. Okay, just to talk you through the next segment, because it'll just be a time lapse, going to be putting my new Ryco oil filter in, and you can see I've also put a new rubber gasket on that as well. Now that does get torqued up, but only to about 25 Newton meters. Also, you can see I've laid out the banjo bolts there for the coolant and the oil. So this is the oil feed pipe that's going to go back on. That's pristine and nice and clean. And I've got a couple of new compressible washers to go back on that. And then once we've got the oil feed pipe back on, I can actually replace that shroud there, which I'm actually not looking forward to getting back on. That was a bit tricky. So like I say, this next bit, I'll just do a quick time lapse. Okay, now for the fun part, we can actually start reassembling our turbo. So I was just having a look at the test sheet, and it actually gives you the time and date as well there, and also the serial number, which I've checked on mine, which is the correct one. So I think it's pretty good that they give you this, just for your own information. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to put this rubber seal on, and it's nice and simple to do. Just get it on the outside. You're just going to slowly rotate it around there. And that's nice and sealed now. Now you'll also notice that if you did watch part one, this was filthy when it come off the car, and it is now nice and clean. So I did spend quite a bit of time cleaning this up just to check it all over, make sure there's no sharp burrs anywhere. So I was really happy with this. Now I've decided I'm going to go ahead and put the actuator back on the car, just because it may help me just get some of the bands done up and that, but you may choose to put that on now, and it does have a locating pin there. So if you can just see, it goes like that there. And then obviously we use our Allen key bolts, which we'll do shortly. Now what we're going to do is we're going to first position this. So there is a locating pin there, which goes in that groove there. So what we're going to do, just start to locate it. There's a perfect fit. And then with that located like that, you can see that can't move. So we're just going to start doing up our 8mm bolts by hand. Now with all them done up finger tight, I'm just going to get you to test, make sure the shaft spins okay, and you can see mine is absolutely perfect, no problem there. Now there was a lot of conflicted information about the torque setting to all these, and I couldn't really find something consistent, so I'm just actually going to tighten it up by hand to what I think is about right. And they are quite a fine thread, so you don't want to over tighten these. So I'm just going to, just until holding it quite close to the centre there. Now I did see somewhere that these were only 8 Newton meters, somewhere else I see it as 25 Newton meters. So like I say, not really consistent information about it, so I'm just going to go ahead and tighten my up how I see fit, really. I mean, like I say, it's a really fine thread, so it'll be really easy to strip. And I'm just using the ratchet right near the centre there, just so I'm not going to get too much pressure on it. Just starting to feel these are really getting up, done nice and tight. And don't forget, you have got that rubber seal on there as well. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. As I go to put this back on the car, you might notice that this link pipe here on the vacuum system's actually changed from red to black. And that's because on closer inspection it had actually perished. So there was a small crack, and then when I twisted it about a little bit, it just opened right up. So luckily I had some vacuum tube around, and this is actually rated to 50 psi. And it can take vacuum as well, so that'd be more than adequate for this. And I know it doesn't look pretty, but these Jubilee clips are nice and tight. There's not going to be any air leaking out of there. Now let's put this back on the car. Before we go ahead and fit the turbo back in the car, I've done a little bit of prep work in here. So I've just moved that pipe out of the way. I've twisted these two round that way because that's the order they're going to be put on. I've cleaned and put this gasket back there. I've actually got an 8mm socket and a 10mm spanner ready for when we put our V-band back on. So there we go, I've got that one on already in place, so we're just going to slot that in place. The main thing is just to make sure that the turbine doesn't touch the side anywhere as we slide it in. I've also left this oil cap on there just to make sure nothing drops in there. So let's lower it down and start positioning it. It's also probably important to mention we've got a locating pin just there, which is at the top, which goes into the casting just there. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually get the V-band on, and I'm going to slightly do it up so that it's on top, and then we'll rotate it round. So I'm not going to lie, I think that is categorically the hardest part of this whole job, is doing up that front bolt on the oil drain pipe. Incredibly hard. It's probably taken me over half hour to do it, and there's been a lot of swear words said. So nevertheless, I've done it up now. I'm happy with it. It's as tight as I can get it. So I'm confident that's not going to leak. Now the next job, we're just going to put the two coolant pipes back on, and then we're going to finish it off with the oil feed pipe on top. And I'll just do this as a speeded up time lapse. Okay, so I've now tightened up this vacuum tube here. I'm going to be putting the air pipe onto the discharge of the cold side of the turbo. I'm going to put the actuator back in here, and I'm going to put the vacuum operated valve back together as well. So we're not too far away from topping the fluids back up. Now all I've got to do is air filter, air box and induction tube, and obviously all of the breather pipes that connect to it. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this, and I'm now going to go ahead and top up the coolant and also the oil. Now you will have noticed I haven't quite put the heat shroud back on. I haven't done this band up here and a few other little bits and pieces. Haven't done these clips up, and the reason being is I want to make sure there's no leaks first. So the idea is I'll top up the fluid and then we should be able to start the car. Okay, so we've now topped up all of the fluids and I've gone over all of the nuts and bolts that I've actually done up. Now you will notice I've got things like the heat shield off, and I'm going to leave that off just until I've run the engine up for a bit, just to make sure none of these connections are leaking. And obviously I'm not going to put the black plastic cover over the top of the engine for the same reason. The other thing I've also done is put down a new cardboard box, just for the same reason, just I can then see any new drips. Completely filled up the water there. I had overfilled it, but I just took some out down to the maximum line. Now I do expect this to go down slightly just when it removes all the air bubbles from the system. And with the oil, I did manage to fit exactly 4.2 litres in, which is what it says in the book anyway. But exactly the same reason, I'm going to go ahead and check that after the engine's been run for a while, because I know that the oil hasn't made it round all of the parts of the engine until the engine's run. So I'm now ready for the car's maiden voyage and to start the engine. Wish me luck. Now I've got to be happy with that. So it's important to remember not to rev the engine just for a minute or two, just to let the oil cycle and also the coolant as well. So just don't rev the engine straight away. So I'm going to let this just tick over for a couple of minutes. I'll turn it off, and then I'm actually going to check around, make sure there's no leaks, and then I'm going to go ahead and take it for a drive. You can take it for a drive without the heat shield on, but just make sure you're not going too far off for too long. Obviously the heat shield's there for a reason. Now I'm really happy with how the engine's now running, and because I've actually had it ticking over for a long time and I've been for about a 10 to 15 minute drive, I'm actually confident that the oil is gone all the way around the engine and also the coolant as well. So now I can actually go ahead and rev the car, and you can really hear the turbo spool up. So I'm really pleased with how this has gone. You'll notice that the engine sounded a little bit louder in the video, and that's because we still haven't finished with all of the heat shield and also the plastic cover. Now, although this is just a cover, it actually has quite a lot of attenuation on the bottom of it, which does tend to quieten it down a bit. And also we haven't got the belly pan on as well. So I'm just going to do a quick time lapse of me putting the heat shield, the black cover, and also the belly pan on. So I've now put the plastic cover on and the belly pan back on the engine, and it's actually noticeably quiet with those on, which is good. Now, I have actually also been driving the car for the last 3 days, going to and from work, which is about 300 kilometers, and the car's running absolutely lovely. It's running exactly as it should. I'm not going to say it was a massive performance upgrade, because obviously we're just replacing the parts and not doing upgrades here. But it's running exactly as it should. The fuel economy is how it should, and it's sounding exactly how it should. So really happy with how it's gone. Now, one thing I am going to do is actually an oil change after about 1,000 kilometers. And that's just because you would have seen in the videos, we had some really bad oil in there, and I want to make sure that's all flushed out. So the other thing that a lot of you will probably say is this isn't the conventional method for replacing a turbo. More often than not, you get the whole assembly from Garrett and you'll replace that. But the thing that we done on this car cost about $200 all up. And when I priced up the full assembly, it was about $1,500. Now that doesn't include any labor, that's purely parts, so a massive saving, which I needed to do for this car. Now, if you're only joining for this video, I did actually make a part 1 video which diagnosed and also stripped the turbo down. So you may want to check that out as well. Because again, this isn't a conventional way of replacing the turbo, I've actually started making a review video where I'm going to review that part, and also I'll upload a video in about 3 or 4 months time when I've done probably 3,000 or 4,000 kilometers, and I'll be able to tell you if the car's still going as well as it is now. So like I say, major saving in money. The time was probably a lot less as well, because we didn't have to remove the hot side manifold. And more importantly, there was no special tools required to do this job. So other than a few Torx bits, it's probably tools that most of you would have in your garage anyway. I will put a list of the tools down in the description below, so you can check those out. Stay tuned on the channel just for that review video as well. Now I will point out that the hardest part of this whole job was removing and replacing that oil drain pipe. That was really, really difficult just to get to those Torx bits underside. But other than that, it was relatively easy. Still time consuming. I would imagine if it's your first time doing this job, it will still take you between 5 and 6 hours would be my estimation. Obviously could do it a lot quicker than that. I just like to take my time and clean everything when I put it back on. So there you go, that's this video, and that's the end of this series. If you found this video interesting or helpful, please do give me the thumbs up, leave me a comment down below, check out some of the other videos and subscribe to my channel.